day one of a really exciting week that we have in store over at CoinMarketCap. Now, the next few days, we have a lot of content that is available for you all to join in and take a view on. And starting off today, we have a really interesting panel discussion focusing on the world of different DAOs and what we're seeing. The reason that we're having such an exciting week with jam-packed full of content is to really thank all of our viewers for helping us reach 300,000 subscribers. We are so grateful for every single one of you that has already subscribed to the channel. And in the spirit of Christmas, we are all rewarding you all and giving you guys some Christmas gifts. So we're one lucky winner will actually be taking home up to 10,000 USDT as a Christmas present. I am going to be giving away some more information in the description box of this panel discussion. So make sure to keep an eye out and feel free to ask any questions that you have in the comment box. Now we're focusing on the different landscapes of DAO organizations, and I'm actually going to hand the conversation over now to Daniel Roberts, who will be moderating the panel discussion focused on DAO. So Dan, thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to you to take it away.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, CoinMarketCap, for hosting it. Everyone hear me well? Audio working all right? Great. We know how in our brave new world, we all want to get our tech right. I went through for a year and a half dealing with live guests who would start their answer and be muted for the first minute of the answer. So let me just introduce our guests, and we might soon have a third panelist pop in. But we've got John Allen from BitDAO. You can see John there. John, give everyone a wave. And then we've got Irina Heaver of UpLift DAO. Irina, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Irina here. How are you?
Irina has warned me, everyone, that she is a quote unquote renegade lawyer. So we will get into lots of juicy stuff about DAOs and the law. But I mean, guys, there's so much to talk about. I'm glad we're doing this. DAOs have had a huge year. Of course, if you've been in crypto for years, I mean, I've been covering it since 2011. The concept of a DAO, and it stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, is not brand new. But certainly, I think that no one would argue that in 2021, it went more mainstream than ever before. Maybe we can credit what happened with Constitution DAO. That got a lot of coverage. Pick your example. But DAOs had just an enormous year. Guys, let's start this way. I don't want to assume everyone already knows about your organizations. So why don't each of you, John and Irina, explain to everyone what your DAO that you work with does? John, do you want to start with BitDAO?
Yeah. So I mean, BitDAO, it's one of the largest DAOs by Treasury, has almost $3 billion in assets. There's also a partnership with Bybit in which they agreed to put 90% of their profit into BitDAO, which is $2 to $5 million a day, so equivalent of about $1 billion a year. So obviously a kind of massive treasury that can't possibly be meaningfully allocated. So the plan is to do token swaps, do kind of strategic partnerships, but then also have this notion of these autonomous entities that are connected to BitDAO, but that have kind of a specific focus on a vertical. So we launched a 500 million gaming ecosystem DAO. We just launched an education DAO in which we partner with 8 of the top university groups around the world. And you're going to see, kind of relatively new. We're just kind of kicking off this model, but there's a lot of people engaging with this, and expect to see kind of a lot more of similar initiatives in the future.
Irina?
So UpLift DAO is a community of business angels. Think about a traditional world. Business angels come together and they fund a tech startup. That's seed funding, and they also promote the company to their friends and family. They advise, which lawyer to hire and which accountant to hire, because in the real world, when a tech entrepreneur is starting their new venture, everything is quite new. So business angels play a very, very important role of mentoring the young generation of entrepreneurs. So a whole huge community of business angels got together and established UpLift DAO, where we incubate, start, and promote DAOs in a decentralized manner. And also our community has a large group of marketeers, because we all know how difficult it is for DAO to cut through the noise. There's so much going on. So unless you have a huge treasure of billions and billions, Cointelegraph will not start writing about you. So our community of marketeers talks about the projects, talks to their existing followership and readership, and through the participation in incubating and growing and promoting the projects, they earn native tokens. And that's basically in a nutshell what UpLift DAO does.
Now, both of you guys used two key terms there that I want to kind of dive deeper on. Irina, you mentioned that it's decentralized, and John, you talked about autonomous entities. And, you know, it's interesting. There are lots of things out there now that come out and say, we're a DAO. In fact, I just saw a tweet this morning from someone in the space saying, just because something has DAO on the end of its name doesn't mean it's really a DAO. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, you know, our type of audience probably knows all about DAOs already, but it stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. And something we've been talking about internally at DeCrypt lately is, well, maybe that's a misnomer. I mean, let's start there, autonomous. They're not autonomous. I mean, they do use smart contracts, but autonomous is kind of what the promise was going to be. If you look back to the Ethereum white paper, autonomous organizations would be completely run on code, right? You set the code, leave it alone, and it just operates. But the whole idea of DAOs is that there are human beings who are members and they vote. So I wonder increasingly if autonomous isn't quite right. And then the decentralized, the idea is that the decision-making is decentralized, but of course, all DAOs at first have leaders. They're not leaderless. There's founder or founders and people who created the thing and are in charge and leading the charge and are the most influential. And of course, they always say we want to progressively decentralize. So like many things in crypto, I wonder if the initial acronym that becomes the go-to term will eventually fade away. I mean, really, they're just internet organizations. They're digital organizations. What do you guys make of kind of the term DAO and whether they really are what we think of them as?
Yeah, well, I mean, happy to jump in here. I mean, I think because, you know, in having these kind of dozens of different autonomous entities that we're spinning up, I think we realized very quickly, and, you know, anyone who's worked in a DAO, that it's a spectrum. It's not binary. It's not either a DAO or it isn't. And I think people are very quick to say this isn't a DAO because it's not just thousands of people who collectively came together and then are now making decisions. If you have something that's maybe funded by a few entities, but then governed by a lot of people, that could perhaps, you know, also be a DAO. If you have something that maybe there's a single leader, but they can actually be voted by all the token holders to be replaced. There's a lot of different governance models, and I think that, you know, they're not binary and it's not static. You know, I think they're going to continually shift. I think the notion for me, this ability to have liquid participation, that people can just jump in a Discord or get involved in a community and very quickly start making kind of decisions. I think that's kind of the important part. You know, by allowing people to kind of engage and act, allowing people to engage and kind of come together is quite interesting, but we're going to have to prove these different models. And I think we're very much in the fact-finding stage. You know, like you mentioned, they're kind of having this giant surge this year where people are getting interested. I think it has to fit the mandate and it has to fit kind of the goals of the DAO. You know, some of them, like Constitution DAO you mentioned, right, are just all these people spontaneously coming together. That's fantastic. I think there's also a bunch of different other catalysts that can make a DAO come together. And it's really just going to have to fit that mold. So we're very much in the fact-finding stage right now, and it's going to be interesting to see kind of what the top models converge to.
Irina, any thoughts on the idea of a DAO, you know, the term?
Yes, I completely agree. We have to start somewhere, right? If we look at the internet, what it looks now, that's not how it was 20 years ago. We had to start somewhere, and then we progressively develop the user applications and the real use case scenarios. But also think about it. What is a DAO from the legal point of view, right? So for centuries, humans were getting together to achieve some sort of a goal. For centuries, they were pulling capital together and resources together to do something, right? Be it to build a Chinese wall, be it to start the first shipping companies, when the first sort of role of corporations started playing around, be it the railway companies, that's, you know, your first LLCs type of thing. So for centuries, people were working together to achieve some sort of economic outcome. And now we live in the world of internet. Bitcoin is the internet, is the money for the internet. But yes, we do not really have a company that is born on the internet, lives on the internet, and only stays on the internet. We do not have that yet. Just a couple of days ago, Tron announced that they're dissolving their foundation because they have truly achieved decentralization. Did they or did they not? We don't know.
Right.
So what happens in the reality is, yes, you have this group of people on the internet working together. And then they have some sort of a parallel or shadow structure in the real world, because whether you like it or not, you have to pay people salaries, you have to rent an office, you might have to pay for your electricity so you can participate in these wonderful Zoom conversations, right? And DAO cannot do that. A human has to do it, or a company has to do it. So the shadow structures are existing in the real world, whether we like it or not. Will we eventually have all of the DAOs dissolving their real world structures, their entities, and be a collection of wonderful individuals working online? Well, we'll find out. But from the legal point of view, that's something not very advisable, because if 4 of us now get together and start a DAO without that limited liability company that protects us from various things, but in the real world, we created a partnership, meaning that me and Daniel and Jonathan and Jessica, we are equally liable for each other's mistakes, and I do not want that. I'm sure we all like each other and trust each other, but we don't know our capabilities, and nor should we be liable for each other's mistakes, for example. That's why the legal entities has started being created. But also, 100 years ago, or let's say 200 years ago, when you were buying the first share in a shipping company, as an individual, you would have thought that's super weird as well, because that really never existed. So you would think, oh my God, what is this company I'm buying a share of? This is a crazy concept. Now it's not crazy, because we got used to that, right? Law has developed and everybody has established that, yes, this is what is happening. At the moment, DAOs are suddenly a crazy concept, but I'm sure in 50 years' time, it will not be a crazy concept at all. And it will be almost like, why don't you operate as a DAO sort of situation?
I want to push you a little further on the legal elements and what's going to happen. But first, let's welcome in Austin, our third panelist joining us now. Austin, glad you were able to join us. He's currently with Audius, and before that was with Solana. So good morning, Austin. And, we've been talking about the kind of challenges and also the potential of DAOs, but why don't you start by giving everyone a little bit of your bio and what you do these days at Audius?
Yeah, good morning, and thank you, Daniel. Sorry for being late. Airport issues, 'tis the season. My name's Austin Virts. I currently run crypto and marketing at Audius. Previous to Audius, I helped run marketing and ecosystem growth for Solana for about 2.5 years. And then previous to that, I started my career in crypto at a project called Origin Protocol, leading global expansion there. So I'm really excited to be here and kind of just ready to jump in.
What is Audius's kind of DAO connection? Is there an Audius DAO yet, or is it something you guys are eyeing?
Yeah, this is a great question. So we don't have any official DAOs per se, but what we have is community created groups where we have something called the Audius Grants Committee, where we had a group of individuals that decided that, hey, we wanted to be able to fund artists, and worked with the Audius Foundation, where they received a grant, and then through a governance proposal process are able then to approve or deny individuals who are seeking money in ways that help expand the ecosystem. So let's say you're an up and coming artist and you're looking to get $500 to help run a remix contest, for example. You want to give other artists a chance to kind of expand on your original music. You can apply for that, and they can either accept or deny it. What's interesting about that is that while the foundation did initially provide the initial audio tokens, once it was sent over to the governance wallet, it's then fully in charge of everyone that's within that Audius Grants Committee to decide how the money is distributed. And we've seen some really, really beautiful things come about from that. The second way that we've incorporated these DAO-like infrastructure is through the node operators. So we essentially provide the UI and the UX for individuals to be able to interface with the blockchain, but everything is controlled through decentralized nodes. And so we run on IPFS and several other things. And so through them, they're able to decide what gets put in, what gets removed, if there's ever any issues, actually are then decided on through a governance voting system through the nodes. Main thing there is we're a protocol, but we don't do consensus. So there's about 15 nodes right now, unlike Solana or Ethereum, where you have thousands. Since there's no consensus, there's no Nakamoto coefficient. Hence, it's just kind of, have those individuals that are in charge of controlling how things are moved around.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, DeCrypt also cross posts all of our stories to IPFS. So trying to actually use the tech that we cover. But awesome. It's a great segue. It's a great segue to ask the whole group about kind of the tension that I think Irina brought up between the excitement around DAOs and everyone saying, you know, a lot of people in crypto, oh, it's the future of companies. And yet there are certain things about companies and about having employees, or we're not going to call them employees, community members, that a DAO can't really handle yet. I mean, eventually people want to get paid. Well, you can pay them in governance tokens. Well, if you are a company first that is now saying we're going to become a DAO, and a great example is Shapeshift. I mean, Shapeshift, you know, founded by Eric Voorhees, was an OG, one of the original crypto companies in the space, and recently dissolved its company and went full DAO. I mean, we recently spoke to Eric and he was saying, I'm not the CEO anymore. Well, there are some people who, even if they love and believe in crypto, they would prefer to be an employee of a company. You know, there's certain safeguards and rails that comes with, knowing that you have benefits and that there's kind of a mothership that handles that. And I think that's going to be a really interesting tension moving forward that might limit the growth of DAOs unless they can kind of figure it out with those tools. I mean, Irina, I know that you're a lawyer and you're thinking about these things. Of course, over in Wyoming, they're trying to recognize DAOs as incorporated entities, you know, as companies. But what's everyone's take? And John, let's start with you because it's been a little while. I mean, you know, is the sky the limit, or are there things that are going to get in the way of the big pie in the sky ambitions for DAOs kind of because of the old world that we're used to?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like very much at this kind of turning point where people are trying to do a lot more than the current legal system currently allows. But I also think that people like to kind of conflate like what I think of a DAO is more of like the governance mechanism with the actual entity structure. And like Irina like really mentioned the kind of the, you know, limited liability aspect. Like there's a reason you want these kind of corporate structures, because when you interface with the physical world, there are a lot of benefits for that. So I think it's like, how do you marry kind of this new governance structure is how I see kind of the DAO movement with some of these underlying existing entity structures. And of course, it's different for every country. It's different for kind of like where you're located, what you're doing. And I think that's going to be interesting to see how those are paired. And I think that Wyoming is doing a great job, but having set up a few of these DAOs, it's a little bit clunky, you know, like there's no kind of open API to update these things. You're supposed to give your ERC20 address and, oh, I want to change it. Okay, actually I have to submit that and go through this long, lengthy process. And you know, we all know that, hey, sometimes you have to change your ETH address. This isn't something that's static. That's going to be over 2-3 years, maybe like hopefully, but things happen, right? And so I think like they're really leaning into it. I love what Wyoming's doing. I think they're getting there, but it shows kind of that tension between how quickly this space is moving and how slow kind of the traditional legal frameworks are moving. So, you know, I think that a lot of people are saying, hey, let's do kind of some, you know, Cayman or BVI, you know, foundation, and then we'll have some kind of like operating or management company in Singapore, you know, or, oh, if you're US based, it's like maybe Delaware's perhaps kind of makes more sense. And you'll just kind of instantiate the notion of like a DAO governance system in your operating docs. And so I think there's some really clever workarounds right now, but that's exactly what they are. They're workarounds. They're not fully Web3 native. So I think we're going to get there. And given the level of interest, I think things are moving quicker than they ever have before. But you know, would love to see in maybe 2 to 3 years time, just have this kind of native DAO framework in all 50 states and all around the world and all of the different countries, but definitely not quite there yet. But I don't think it's a kind of hard barrier that's going to stop it.
I like what you said there, all around the world, all around 50 states. The 50 states for you is all over the world. I understand that might be the case for those who are based in America, but there's like a few countries outside of the US, and we've been creating some really cool things. Yeah, imagine that, crazy. And we've been doing some cool things as well. I mean, look at Europe, look at Switzerland, where I'm based, look at what Dubai is doing. There's some wonderful things going on there. So, and as a person who is located outside of the US, we are very, very worrisome of the SEC. And for example, none of my clients and none of the European-based, Asian-based projects will go to Delaware. You know, I had the privilege and the honor of litigating against SEC and DOJ for 7 years, and I would never want to do that again in my life. So yes, there are some wonderful structures that can be set up in Switzerland, for example. There's some wonderful structures that are being set up in Baltic countries, and as well new jurisdictions, Bahrain and Singapore and Dubai. Sorry, not new jurisdictions, country states jurisdictions. They're doing some wonderful work there as well. And if you're a small country state, you do not have, political struggles to fight with other 49 states. You can do some really cool things, and you can progress them quite faster. So sorry, Jonathan, I really felt like giving you an earful for being very American Central there.
Yeah,
And,
well, I mean, I think it's like, hold on.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I think like, I highlighted kind of the 50 states because like each of them are very different in the way they handle it, right? And I totally agree that there's some phenomenal things going around all around the world. And it's kind of crazy to me that it's like, hey, you're doing something phenomenal in Switzerland with a full international group, but maybe you have a couple members from the US, and then all of a sudden that opens you to the purview of the SEC, and there's real concerns around that. So I think that's kind of focusing on that, because that seems to be where most of the pain points are, right? Like I think working with a lot of international DAOs, it's not even a consideration, but then all of a sudden, oh, I want to, maybe do something in the US, or kind of like market in the US, or maybe I want to have one US member in my DAO because it's open and permissionless, and maybe there's a few people want to join. And I think that's really the struggle, because you're right, there are a lot of countries that are extremely progressive, and I think you're seeing that a lot of development is shifting to those places that are more kind of comfortable with it, that are more progressive, and it's just really unfortunate that I don't know a single large DAO who's saying, yep, I want to go to Delaware, I want to go to all these states. Most of them are saying, no, like where outside of the US can I go? And so I think that's kind of the current trend. Hopefully that changes, but yeah, that's just not the current state.
And guys, I mean, we could do an entire separate panel on that regulatory issue, because all of crypto is dealing with those same questions. I mean, think about all the token launches. I always say to people, the ICO boom did not end in 2017. We still see new tokens launched all the time. But now many, or even most projects for now, just say it's so uncertain or so draconian or so concerning in the US that we'll just launch everywhere but the US, which is really a shame. I mean, a lot of people think that the US has kind of already blown it with losing a lot of crypto projects or crypto companies. And DAOs are just kind of one aspect of that. Austin, we're going to chime in on kind of the legal considerations here.
I am nowhere in the same ballpark of these folks, but I actually had a question that might move things forward here is, from the regulatory perspective, like, do you all see a benefit to starting out as a DAO centric company from the start, rather than switching from a traditional Web3 structure incorporated into a DAO? Is there like a benefit from starting as a DAO infrastructure from the beginning?
I don't know if you can think about that. If you are starting, we're a group of decentralized people coming together, and we will start working together. The real world where we live will consider us as a partnership. And I don't think it's very smart for taking a liability of the whole group. You might even not know them in person, right? So what I like is jurisdictional arbitrage. So for example, UAE, we have no taxes. So set up an operating company in Dubai and run the launch of the protocol out of Dubai. Estonia, for example, it takes 3 days. I am not making it up. It takes 3 days to launch a token issuing entity, get an opinion, engage with a regulator, have all ticks done and crosses and whatever, like, here you go, launch a token. For example, if you're Asian is your market, choose some Asian jurisdictions which are very, very beneficial. If, for example, you're doing a protocol like Solana or similar, Switzerland has wonderful structures called associations that you can set up in a matter of a couple of weeks. And then those associations are not very good, for example, for financial products if you're doing some sort of a DeFi project, but if you're doing some protocol like a Solana or Near or something similar. So Switzerland is wonderful for that. So I would really go shopping, right? What's out there in the big wild world? Pick bits and pieces. Here you're tax-free, here you can do in 3 days, and here you can set up in a week, and then start from there. And then progressively, once you actually know what to do, how to do, and where you're going with that, then morph into a DAO once you have, more sort of, and I really like what Jonathan said, DAO, it's more of a governance rather than the legal structure. That's how I see that as well. So look at the DAO as a governance of your entire group, right? Because you shopped around the world and you have your wonderful things on your plate, and DAO, think about it as the brain that sort of controls the little things you have on your plate, which you establish in the real world, taking all the real world benefits and using the decentralization as to run those resources and those benefits.
It's a great answer. Yeah, and it's a great question, because it's something that I think a lot of organizations are wondering about. Again, Austin, right before you joined, we were talking about kind of the potential here, and the idea that DAOs are not new for people in crypto, but in 2021 they certainly went mainstream. I mean, same with NFTs. I think in some ways, same kind of path where CryptoKitties were NFTs, but we just weren't using that acronym yet, and now suddenly everyone's using it. In that vein, here's a great way to end, guys. I love when viewers are asking live questions. We had a question come in from someone who asked, is it possible to create a DAO for responding to natural disasters? And we can chat about that specific question, but what I really want to discuss big picture, I mean, what are the possibilities and what are the limits? I mean, are there things that DAOs can't do? And I mentioned earlier that it seems to me Constitution DAO deserves a lot of credit. That to me was the mainstream moment. I mean, everyone was covering it. Yes, Constitution DAO failed to buy the document that it was trying to buy, but in a matter of days, it raised something like $41 million. And there was a lot of chaos. I mean, I pointed out that in the moment, even the members of the DAO who had contributed money didn't seem to know which person bidding at Sotheby's was on their behalf. So that was a problem. But I think it really demonstrated the potential for DAOs. That said, we've covered some of these, and some of them are real pie in the sky, ideas. We covered a DAO that wants to raise enough money to buy an NBA team. Well, you're going to need $2 billion. So maybe, maybe not. And then we get into, let's say they actually did it. Who would be the actual owners? Which people would get to go to the games and be in the owner's box? So all these are worthwhile questions. We can use the viewer's question on natural disasters as a jumping off point, but I turn it over to each of the three of you to answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my opinion, like everything is possible with a DAO, and not to be kind of like, hey, find this guy, like everything's, but like, I think you really get to the heart of it as well, is it's like the structure and kind of like how you set these things up is extremely important, because something like Constitution DAO is extremely mission driven. Hey, let's all come together, let's bid on something, and then we win it. What do you do after that? What if you have additional funds? What do you do with those funds? And I think like that's when you have this real, what are we about? What are we driven by? And I think if you're going to say, hey, something for natural disasters, if it's for a single natural disaster, sure, everyone comes together, you allocate that capital, and cool, it's done. But if you're saying, hey, who's going to be the response team for this? Who's going to be responsible? I think really defining those roles and responsibilities. And I think Irina got into it, where it's like, if you start as a DAO, that can be a bit challenging. Maybe there's a few people who are leading it, right? Maybe you start out kind of like having these core verticals defined, and then you slowly expand and decentralize that, allow people to engage and participate. But I think it's not kind of a clear road. I think it's not saying like, hey, we start as a DAO with 10,000 people, all submit like $10, and then things just work. That's not really how things happen. If you're just trying to purchase something, sure. But if you want kind of like a broad mandate, if you want to actually have impact, you have to have certain people start to lead and certain people to coordinate around that. Like it's definitely power laws, right? Like not everyone's like participating in an equal way, but everyone can participate. And I think that's a really important aspect. A lot of people just want to commit capital. Maybe some people, you have a few resources. Maybe this month I can be full-time, this month I can't. But how do you balance that? And how do you fit the structure with the mandate is something that's extremely important. And I think that's like why we're all here. That's why we're all leaning into this and engaging, because it is worthwhile. I think everything is possible with this DAO structure. You just have to kind of define that, get the right people. And it's not a straight path. You're going to have to iterate. You're going to have to change. You have to be flexible. And I think that a DAO structure is infinitely flexible as far as kind of the governance and what you can accomplish with it. So, I mean, that's why it's so compelling to me.
I think people should just experiment and they should start it. They should see how it's going and they should learn from others, and they should also share their learnings with everybody else. Because if you don't try, you do not know. So the person who asked about natural disasters, clearly he or she is very passionate about natural disasters. Maybe they went through one just now, and I'm sure they can find people who have similar mindset and have similar passion for that very particular issues. For example, I'm very passionate about, governments leaving us alone. So maybe I should start a DAO, and I shall name it like "Leave Us All Alone." So I think it's very important working on something that you enjoy and that you like, because this is not easy, right? And if you want to persevere, you should find people of a similar mindset and just go for it, of course. And don't worry that the regulations are not there. The regulations are 10 to 15 years behind the innovation. Innovation is
a long time to wait. It's a long time to wait.
It's a long time to wait. Innovation in its core is permissionless. Imagine if the founder of the Zoom that had to wait for the rules and regulations about the video conferencing to come around before they launched the Zoom, we'd never have this conference. Imagine the guy who was, the brothers that were building the airplanes in their garage. Imagine if they had to wait for permission to build airplanes. Then Jonathan would be taking a bicycle to Dubai. Beta start now, because the event is in 3 months' time, the one that Jonathan is attending in Dubai. So that's the whole thing. Innovation is permissionless. So don't ask for permission. Go do things, learn, make mistakes, break things. Just don't do anything too drastic. Maybe have a lawyer around you, and it's just do it, of course. Should you start a DAO that has a very good cause, climate change, global warming? I do not know what people care about nowadays, but do it, absolutely.
So I guess my thoughts are, I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I have two opinions. I think in the current state of things, a lot of folks are forcing DAO infrastructure into things that don't necessarily need a DAO just to say it's a DAO. Like, you're seeing these things come out where it's X DAO, and there's absolutely no need for it in the current situation. It kind of makes things a little more difficult to maneuver through, where when you have 50 people voting on a simple process, it can, in the current infrastructure that we have, really slow things down. On the same vein of that, though, is it allows ownership in a way that we've never experienced before. Like, Web3 provided paths for individuals to have ownership in the stake of what they're being involved in. Like, they're able to be rewarded for their time. And so DAOs provide a really cool process for individuals to take friends with benefits, for example, or like Pleaser DAO, where these individuals around a common passion are able to come together, contribute, and then in the same return, pool value from what they're giving into the organization. And so they're able to then grow in correlation. Like, as Friends with Benefits grows, the token increases in price, and therefore early adopters and early believers and early contributors are then able to grow with that. And so it's allowed this really cool situation where you both are sometimes overcomplicating things, but also able to equally reward the individuals that are believing in the cause in a way that just we've never been able to do before. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the tooling comes. I think we need like another year of tooling and infrastructure, and then we'll really be able to like do some damage here.
I say the same thing too, that the UX still needs to go a long way if they're going to go completely mainstream, which applies to a lot of crypto. I think that we should want to onboard new people to the space, but all those tools need to get a little friendlier so that not just the tech savvy can get in. But great discussion. There's so much more we could talk about. We'll have to chat again. John, Irina, and Austin, thank you guys so much. From BitDAO, UpLift DAO, and Audius. Of course, I am the editor of DeCrypt. I hope everyone watching reads DeCrypt for all your news. And Jess, I'll turn it back over to you. Thanks so much, CoinMarketCap.
Thank you so much,
Daniel.
Dan. Thank you all to all of our guests there. And Dan, thank you so much for moderating the panel. Guys, that was an amazing conversation. Now heading over to our viewers just before we do wrap up, make sure to take part in the competition if you have not already. The comment is pinned on the chat. We'll see you all again really soon. We have a lot more videos coming today, so keep a very close eye. Subscribe if you have not already to not miss any future notifications, and see you all again